Welcome to Melrose Unitarian Universalist Church. Our service today is called the Consolation of Water Lilies. Good morning. That was pretty good. I'm the Reverend Dr. Suzanne Interligator, and my pronouns are she and hers. And I had a great summer. I hope you did too. It's good to be back. You may not have noticed, but I did a little redecorating. I may have gone a little bit overboard. My hobby this summer became paper folding, and I maybe did too much. This is actually a surprisingly large room to try to decorate. And I think my husband maybe went a little overboard with the hanging of things, but people at home may not be able to see that there's weird stuff hanging from all the lights and from the ceiling. But today is a very special Sunday, and I wanted it to look special in here. I'm not sure I hit the mark. Maybe it's just different, but that is something. Our theme today is water lilies, as I mentioned, and so I've hung up water lilies. And we're having just a few tech difficulties today. My iPad doesn't like me. The projector doesn't like me. We're a little bit out of practice. So bear with me if you would. I hope your summer was great too. I just wanted to mention that we have our kids with us today, which is fantastic. Yay. And I have made coloring pages of water lilies that are available up here and in the back if anybody feels so moved they would like to color today. And if and when all things go great today, everybody could have a water lily to take home if they like. I've got extras up here too. And I know things will go well. As I said, today is our water ceremony. If you've brought special water with you, there will be a time in the service to bring it forward. There will be actually a bunch of times to bring it forward, so you don't need to bring it just yet. And if you didn't, there's plenty here, so no worries. Every year, it is our tradition to start with a water ceremony. We use a bowl of water to symbolize our community, and we bring water from our homes and from our travels to pour in here and symbolically join us all back together again in one body. There is a lot going on at church these days, you may have noticed, but I'm not going to tell you all about it now. You'll have to read your midweek newsletter for that. But we do have one announcement, and I'm going to call forward Eric Lambiaso to give it for us. Eric, if you'd come to the lectern, please.
I'm short, but not that short. I don't need this stool. Less of an announcement, more of an acknowledgement. First of all, good morning. I'm very appreciative of the summer programming we did in the summer services. So I wanted to acknowledge those that led services this summer. So thank you very much to Jane Foley, Nathan Wright, Rebecca Mooney, Kathy Kelleher, Tom Kurz, Randall Gramenstein, Joyce Rodenheimer, and Dan Franklin. Thank you so much for all your efforts. And I also want to acknowledge Garen Boyd, who helped collaborate with me and coverage while I was gone. I also wanted to mention we had a great event here last night. For those, we had 25 different people participate by providing and sharing their art, both in performance and in display. If you weren't able to join us, the art is still up and would love for you to appreciate it and see it during coffee hour. After coffee hour, the artists, please feel free to take your art home. Whatever art isn't collected, we'll put in the library for safekeeping and you can retrieve it this week. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Eric. Nancy, if you would do me a favor and just switch on the last set of lights. I think we'll look better, a little better up here if we're lit. Thank you. So as I mentioned, today's service is a little bit different from usual. It's a multi-gen. So I've got an order of service slide here for you to get oriented if you need it. We're here in the opening sequence now. You'll recognize the things that happen. Then we've separated the story into 4 parts this morning. So We'll have more story and more visuals and a chance to walk around a little bit. First, we start with story part 1, and there'll be a reflection on story part 2, and the third part of the story. After part 2, we'll be sharing our sorrows with our usual centering song, our time of silence and our sorrows. And then after that, story part 3 and our offering. And then story part 4, our reflection and sharing our joys. So most of the familiar parts are here today, just in a slightly different order. A big thank you today to everyone who is supporting us and helping out, especially our usher, Michael O'Connor, our greeter, Nancy Nichols, and our coffee hosts, Mary Beth Griscom and Dan Griscom, and also Harry Ha and Jennifer Fanning. Thank you to everyone. Now, speaking of our greeter and greeting, it's time to say hello to one another and say hello to our friends who are joining us on Zoom this morning. Turn around, give hug shooters, shake hands, whatever feels right for you. No one on Zoom? Okay, it's all right. Bill tells me that so far, first time, there's no one on Zoom. So there's no one to wave to. It's good, we're all here. There's a problem joining. Oh, thanks, Dan. I told you the tech problems are just running into us this morning. Dan's on the phone now. Thanks, Dan. Okay, well, we're going to go forward, and hopefully people will be able to join. I call us to worship this morning with these words from Molly Hausch Gordon, who's our minister in Columbia, Missouri. We gather this morning tenderly, like drops of dew on a leaf of grass, hopefully, like gathered raindrops in a cloud, gleefully, like water rushing in a stream to the sea, deeply, like groundwater pulled up from a well. We gather from every direction for another year of growth and depth, another year of companionship and hope, another year of learning to love this world. We gather like the water that joins us across all of creation, the water that connects us within and without, merging and flowing across the world. And now together we light the symbol of our faith, the flaming chalice. Here to do it for us this morning is our congregation's president of the board, Jenny Wen Grovius, and she will also lead us in our covenant. Thanks, Jenny.
Good morning. I invite you now to rise in body or in spirit and join me in the words of our covenant, which you can see on the screen momentarily.
We're dealing with something else right now.
Awesome. There we go. All right. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into divinity with the divine. This is our covenant, one with another and with our God.
Thank you, Jenny. If you would please, everyone, remain standing and join the choir and Tom in our opening hymn, everybody's favorite, For the Beauty of the Earth. It's number 21, I believe, in the gray hymnal. you please be seated. Today we celebrate the Unitarian Universalist ritual of the water ceremony. Our congregation and the life we share together is like a river, always moving, always changing. And we choose whether and how and when to step in, to enter the flow, to share who we are in order to grow together. Today we build a symbolic river with this water we have collected from places all over and even from years past. Together we pour from these separate vessels into one common container, and as we do, we join the streams of our own lives into the river of our common life together. To frame our ceremony today, I've chosen 4 readings from the same text. It's a book many of you know because we read it together 2 or 3 years ago, led by our Green Sanctuary Committee. It's a memoir called Braiding Sweetgrass: Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge, and the Teachings of Plants. The author, Robin Wall Kimmerer, is a mother, scientist, decorated professor, and enrolled member of the citizen Potawatomi Nation. She lives in Syracuse, New York, where she's a SUNY Distinguished Professor of Environmental Biology and the founder and director of the Center for Native Peoples and the Environment. These 4 excerpts are all from Kimmerer's chapter 10, which is called The Consolation of Water Lilies. I've added some illustrations on the slides to help you enter into the story. And so, part 1, loss. Before I knew it, and long before the pond was ready for swimming, they were gone. My daughter Lyndon chose to leave and to put her feet in the ocean at a redwood college far from home. I went to visit her that first semester, and we spent a lazy Sunday afternoon admiring the rocks of the agate beach at Patrick's Point. Walking the shore, I noticed a smooth green pebble threaded with carnelian, just like one I'd passed a few steps earlier. I walked back, scooped it up, and found them. I reunited the 2 pebbles, letting them lie together, shining wet in the sun until the tide came back and pulled them apart, rolling their edges smoother and smoother and their bodies smaller. The whole beach was like that for me, a gallery of beautiful pebbles divided from each other and from the shore. Lyndon's way on the beach, however, was different. She too was rearranging, but her method was to place gray with black basalt and pink beside a spruce green oval. Her eye was finding new pairings. Mine was searching out the old. I had known it would happen from the first time that I held her. From that moment on, all of her growing would be away from me. It is the fundamental unfairness of parenthood that if we do our jobs well, the deepest bond we are given will walk out the door with a wave over their shoulder. Oh, we get good training along the way. We learn to say, "Have a good time, sweetie," while we are longing to pull them back to safety. And against all the evolutionary imperatives of protecting our gene pool, we give them car keys and freedom. It's our job. And I wanted to be a good mother. I was happy for her, of course, poised at the beginning of a new adventure, but I was sad for myself, enduring the agony of missing her. My friends who had already weathered this passage counseled me to remember the parts of having a house full of children that I would not miss a bit. I would be glad to retire from the worried nights when the roads are snowy, waiting for the sound of tires in the driveway exactly 1 minute before curfew, the half-done chores, and the mysteriously emptying refrigerator. And now I share a few thoughts. As they say, the only constant in life is change. Everything all around us changes all the time. Even the people and the places we know and love best, especially the people and the places we know and love best. And sometimes it hurts. September is the season of change. New beginnings, of course, always carry with them endings. Just a couple weeks ago, a minister, a colleague of mine, told me a story. Her 11-year-old son asked her to please stop singing him to sleep. And she said, okay. She agreed. And then he said, well, why do you look so sad? And she said, well, I didn't know yesterday was going to be the last time. If I had known, maybe I would have marked it in some way. Parenthood is full of last times. The last time we pick them up. The last time they let us choose their clothes. The last time they borrow money. And we never quite see them coming. Well, most of the time we don't see the last one coming. They only become clear in the rearview mirror as we look back. But sometimes just noticing it and recognizing it can help. When my friend explained all this to her son, the best she could, he said, okay, well, I guess we can do it one more time if we have to. And they did, and somehow that made the transition easier for her. Sometimes noticing can help us manage. Just a couple weeks ago, our oldest moved away, far away, for the first time. Eli is 23 now. He graduated from Tufts in the spring with a degree in computer science, and he is off to Silicon Valley and San Francisco to find out what life holds. And so this reading really echoes for me. But of course, I talked to Eli about crime and rent and jobs, and he knows all that. You know, he's a mature and responsible kid. But still, in my mind, he's still that blonde toddler riding a tricycle, wearing his blue and white striped Thomas the Tank Engine train conductor hat. And our daughter, Lily, moved back to the dorms at Tufts for her second year. And someone sent me a piece from The Onion, which summed it all up perfectly. The headline was, "Mom's fear about daughter leaving for college channeled into fight about storage bins." Can't relate to that at all. We want to say, I love you and I'll miss you, but somehow it ends up with, we're only making this trip once, so if you want to buy a bunch of cheap stuff that falls apart in 6 months, that's your choice. And then, I can't even deal with you right now. Parenting is really hard. All kinds of relationships are really hard. And we are always making mistakes. Sometimes it seems like all we can do is make mistakes. And that's okay. Church is where we come to learn how to forgive, especially ourselves. So I ask you, is there something changing in your life right now? Is there somebody walking away or something else that you need to let go of? I invite you to let any memories that you have, even any sadness, come forward right now. I invite you to hold it gently with all the kindness and honor it deserves for just the next few minutes. Now we go to part 2, which is letting go. I held in my heart all those memories, all those mornings when I would get up and the animals had beaten me to the kitchen. The calico cat yelled from her perch, "Feed me!" The long-haired cat stood by his bowl silently with an accusing stare. The dog threw herself against my legs with happiness and looked expectant. "Feed me!" And I did. Then I dropped handfuls of oatmeal and cranberries into one pot and stirred hot chocolate in another. The girls came downstairs sleepy-eyed and needing that homework paper from last night. "Feed me," they said, and I did. I tipped the scraps into the compost bucket so that when next summer's tomato seedlings say, "Feed me," I can. And when I kissed the girls goodbye at the door, the horses whicker at the fence for their bucket of grain, and the chickadees call from their empty seed tray, "Feed me, 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 feed me, me, me." The fern on the windowsill droops its fronds in silent request. When I put the key in the ignition of the car, it starts to ping, fill me," which I do. I listen to public radio all the way to school, and thank goodness it's not Pledge Week. I remember my babies at the breast, the first feeding, the long, deep suck that drew from my innermost well, which was filled and filled again by that look that passed between us, the reciprocity of mother and child. I suppose I should welcome the freedom from all that feeding and worrying, but I will miss it. Maybe not the laundry, but the immediacy of those looks, the presence of our reciprocal love that is hard to say goodbye to. I understood that part of my sadness at Lyndon's departure was because I did not know who I would be when I was no longer known as Lyndon's mother. But I had a bit of a reprieve from that crisis, as I am also justly famous for being Larkin's mother. But this too would also pass. Before my younger daughter Larkin left, she and I had a last campfire up at the pond and watched the stars come out. "Thank you," she whispered, "for all of this." The next morning, she had the car all packed up with dorm furnishings and school supplies. The quilt that I made for her before she was born showed through one of the big plastic tubs of essentials. When everything she needed was stuffed in the back, she helped me load my supplies onto the roof. After we'd unloaded and decorated the dorm room and went out to lunch as if nothing was happening, I knew it was time for my exit. My work was done, and hers was just beginning. I saw other girls dismiss their parents with a waggle of their fingers, but Larkin walked me out to the dorm parking lot where the herds of minivans were still disgorging their cargoes. Under the gaze of deliberately cheerful dads and strained-looking moms, we hugged again and shed some smiley tears that we both thought had already been used up. As I opened the car door, she started to walk away, but then she turned and called out loudly, "Mom, if you break down in uncontrollable sobs on the highway, please pull over." The entire parking lot erupted in laughter, and we were all released. We pause our story again. We pause our story again and take time, as we do every week, for quiet and for sharing with one another. Today we'll do it just slightly differently, and I will guide you through. First, we'll sing our centering song, and then we'll have our 2 minutes of silence, or quiet as we feel like being. And then I will invite you to share your sorrows as you feel comfortable. Our centering song for September is "There's a River Flowing in My Soul," number 1007 in the Teal Hymnal. Lyrics will be on the screen. Just the first 2 verses. Please remain seated and let the song just gently guide you into our time of silence. All of life is change, and the price of love is loss. Some of us have endured some losses this summer, and we come together again, and we want to share them with one another. We share our sorrows in community. We learn to share the burden, to carry the weight together. For a change today, we're going to have a few different ways to share your sorrows. Folks on Zoom, if there are any, can go ahead and type them into the chat box, and I will read them aloud in just a moment. People in the room can share in two ways. First, if you prefer to share silently and not to speak today, you can come forward, and while Tom shares a little incidental music in just a second, you can simply pour some water from our pitchers into our communal bowls, or pour the water that you brought with us in a symbolic gesture, sharing your sorrows with our community, pouring your heart out to the rest of us. So, Tom, if you would, and let's share silently first, please. Thanks, Tom. And now I want to invite the folks who are a little bit talky to come forward, and please be brief. If you have a sorrow you want to tell us about, come forward, share at the microphone so everyone can see and hear you, and pour some water into our communal bowl. And it could be the same people. You can come back again. Is that on?
My name is Jenny, as you all know, and my candle is for my Aunt Sue, who passed away this week. I was extremely close to her growing up. She was my favorite, and I'm very close to my Uncle Chuck as well, her husband, and they don't have kiddos, so it really is a lot of family support for them, and they're back in Colorado, and yeah, so.
Hi, my name's Brian. I spent a good part of May living with my mother, and the summer I spent visiting her in the nursing home, and she passed away in August, and it gave me such peace to hear the hymn we sang at the beginning. That was one we used at her funeral, and it's just such a nice sign.
My name is Dan Franklin, and on July 27th, as part of a massive layoff, I lost my job. It's both a loss and a gain in that I decided can start retirement now. So that's good, but I'm periodically missing the satisfaction of working with other people every day to build something that we believed would make schools a better place.
Oh, I'm supposed to read the ones from Zoom. I'm out of practice, aren't I? That's okay to laugh. I don't see any sorrows in our Zoom room. Michael, if you would go ahead and light the candle, please. As a beacon of our caring and our love for everybody in our lives who is struggling, for all the sorrows that were spoken and unspoken. Let us remember to reach out to the people in our lives who are hurting with love and compassion. And now we move on to part 3. As it turns out, I did not need Kleenex or the breakdown lane. After all, I wasn't going home. I had planned for this with my special grief containment system strapped to the roof of my car. When my children were growing up, I spent every weekend at track meets or hosting slumber parties, so I rarely find time to go out in nature alone. Now I was going to celebrate my freedom rather than mourn my loss. You hear about those shiny, red, midlife crisis Corvettes? Well, my version of that, a shiny new red kayak, was strapped to the top of my car. I drove down the road to Labrador Pond and slipped my kayak into the water, just remembering the sound of the first bow wave brings back the whole of the day. Late summer afternoon, golden sun and lapis sky between hills that fold in around the pond. Red-winged blackbirds cackled in the cattails. Not a breath of wind disturbed the glassy pond. Open water sparkled ahead, but first I had to traverse the marshy edges, beds of pickerel weed and water lilies so thick they covered the water. The long petioles of the spatterdock lilies, stretching 6 feet from the murky bottom to the surface, tangled around my paddle as if they wanted to keep me from moving forward. Pulling away the weeds that stuck to my hull, I could see inside their broken stalks. They were packed with spongy white cells filled with air, like a pith of styrofoam, something that botanists call aerenchyma. Aerenchyma. These air cells are unique to floating water plants and give the leaves buoyancy, like a built-in life jacket. This characteristic makes them very hard to paddle through, but they serve a larger purpose. Pond lily leaves get their light and air at the surface, but are attached at the bottom of the lake to a living rhizome as thick as your wrist and as long as your arm. The rhizome inhabits the anaerobic depths of the pond, but without oxygen, the whole plant will perish. So the aerenchyma forms a convoluted chain of air-filled cells, a conduit between the surface and the depths, so that oxygen can slowly diffuse to the buried rhizome. All around me were lilies in all stages of rising and sinking and reemerging, a waterscape of change that is hard to move through. But I bent to the task, pushing my red boat through the green. I paddled hard and strong out to the deep water, pulling against the weight of the vegetation, eventually breaking free. When I had exhausted my shoulders so that they were as empty as my heart, I rested on the water. I closed my eyes and let the sadness come, adrift. Maybe a little breeze came up, maybe a hidden current, or the earth tilting on its axis to slosh the pond. But whatever the invisible hand, my little boat began to rock gently, like a cradle on the water. Held by the hills and rocked by the water, the hand of the breeze against my cheek, I gave myself over to that comfort that came unbidden. I didn't know how long I floated, but my little red boat drifted the whole length of the lake. I invite you now for just a moment to pause, close your eyes if you like, and float. Rustling whispers around my hull drew me from my reverie, and the first thing that I saw upon opening my eyes were polished green leaves of water lilies smiling up at me again, rooted in darkness and floating in the light. I found myself surrounded by hearts on the water, luminous green hearts. The lilies seemed to pulse with light, green hearts beating with my own. There were young heart leaves below the water on their way up, and old leaves on the surface, some with edges tattered by a summer of wind and waves, and no doubt, kayak paddles. Scientists used to think that the movement of oxygen from the surface leaves of lilies to the rhizome was merely the slow process of diffusion, an inefficient drift of molecules from a region of high concentration in the air to low concentration underwater. But new inquiries revealed a flow we could have known by intuition if we had remembered the teachings of the plants. The new leaves take up oxygen into the tightly packed air spaces of their young developing tissues, whose density creates a pressure gradient. The older leaves, with looser air spaces created by the tatters and tears, create a low pressure region where oxygen can be released into the atmosphere. This gradient exerts a pull on the air taken in by the young leaf. Since they are connected by air-filled capillary networks, the oxygen moves by mass flow from the young leaves to the old, passing through and oxygenating the rhizome in the process. The young and the old are linked in one long breath, an inhalation that calls for reciprocal exhalation, nourishing the common root from which they both arose. New leaf to old leaf to new, mother to daughter, mutuality endures. No, I'm over here. So Kimmerer goes on, she says, I am consoled by the lesson of the lilies. I paddled more easily back to the shore. I loaded the kayak onto my car in the failing light, and leftover pond water drained out onto my head. I smiled at the illusion of my grief containment system. There is no such thing. We spill over into the world, and the world spills over into us. The earth, that first among good mothers, gives us the gift that we cannot provide ourselves. I hadn't realized that I had come to the lake and said, "Feed me," and my empty heart was fed. I had a good mother. She gives what we need without even being asked. I wonder if she gets tired too, old Mother Earth, or if she too is fed by the giving. Thanks, I whispered, for all of this. Tom, I'm handing off to you now.
Organization funded by your generous annual pledge. You may also contribute to our weekly collection plate, which we split every month with a deserving cause. Folks on Zoom can donate either way using the orange button at the top right corner of our homepage at melrose.uu.org. Today, 771 million people, that's 1 in 10, lack access to safe water at home. And 1.7 billion, 1 in 4 people, don't have access to safe sanitation. For the month of September, this church will be giving half our collection plate to the charity called water.org. This is a global nonprofit working to bring water and sanitation to the world. For our offertory music today, our choir will share a song called The Water Remembers by Jason Shelton.
It was dark when I got home, but my plan had included leaving the porch light on because a dark house would have been one assault too many. I carried my life jacket into the porch and got my keys out before I noticed a pile of presents, all beautifully wrapped in brightly colored tissue paper, as if a piñata had burst over my door. A bottle of wine with a single glass on the doorsill. My first thought was that there had been a going away party on the porch for Larkin, and she had missed it. That's one lucky girl, I thought, showered with love. I looked through the gifts for tags or a card, but there was nothing to show who had made the late delivery. The wrapping was just tissue paper, so I kept hunting for a clue. I smoothed the purple paper tight on one gift and read the label underneath. It was a jar of Vicks Vapo Rub. A little note fell from the twisted tissue paper. Take comfort. I recognized the handwriting immediately as my cousin's, dear enough to me to be my sister, who lives hours away. My fairy godmother had left me 18 notes and presents, one for every year of mothering Larkin. A compass to find your new path. A packet of smoked salmon, because they always come home. Pens, celebrate time for writing. I realized we are showered every day with gifts, but they are not meant for us to keep. Their life is in their movement, their flow, the inhale and exhale of our shared breath. Our work and our joy is to pass along the gifts and to learn to trust that what we put out into the universe will always come back. The water remembers. Cycles of life, blessings and strife, the water remembers. This community remembers. When we gather and regather, we hold the memories of those who came before us, and we honor all those who gather with us now, and all parts of them, you in your full being, all of who you are, sorrows and joys, blessings and strife, cycles of life. All of it is sacred, all of it is welcome here. Now it's time to share our joys and our gratitudes. First, we're going to do it quietly for people who don't like to talk so much, and then again, we'll do it out loud as we did the sorrows. So Tom, if you would play a little improvisational music, and anyone who has a joy to share quietly with a quiet mind and heart, please come forward and pour some water. Thank you. And I invite anyone on Zoom to go ahead and type a joy into the chat room, and I will read them in just a second. Anyone here who has a joy to share, who would like to speak into the microphone, I invite you to come forward so everyone can hear you and see you.
Delahanty, and that last reading reminded me that I have a very special cousin who is as wonderful to me as a sister, and I wish she was.
If you want to pour some water, Mary, you can.
Good morning. I'm Susan Danielson. My joy is that my son Paul is here this morning. He has something to say too.
So my name, I'm gonna have to bend way down. My name is Paul Danielson. I'm here with my parents, Susan and Lee. I'm here to thank this congregation for their incredible generosity. So I decided this year to ride Pan Mass Challenge, and in the middle of that, figuring out how I was going to raise $6,000, my parents said, well, why don't we send out an email to this congregation that they've been a part of for about a year. And so they send me a message and say, we sent out the email, and these donations start flooding in from people I have ever met. And I'd say this congregation probably raised a solid $1,500 for this cause. And I just wanted to thank everyone.
Thank you. Come on forward. I'm just going to take this microphone out because it's important that everybody can hear. Here you go. Stefano?
My name is Stefano. I had surgery early in August and I was out of commission for a few days. I wanted to light a candle of gratitude to everyone in this community who provided meals for our family, prepping, delivering, and so on. They really meant a lot to us. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Corey Mann, and you reminded me that I had surgery this summer too, and recovered just fine, but it was a tough summer. I'm just very pleased to be back here today. It's a very warming feeling to be back with all of you, and it's a great place.
Thanks, Corey.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Nyla. I just wanted to share that my daughter Elise has started a graduate school program last week, and I'm very happy for her. She's completely overwhelmed, but I think that's probably normal, so that's good.
Thanks, Nyla. Step forward, everybody.
I have lots of joys and sorrows today, but right now I just want to say I'm very joyful for this perfectly timed service, and I love the water lilies. So thank you. They're bringing me lots of joy.
Good. You can take some home.
Good morning. I'm Garen Boyd. I just wanted to say that July 13th, 2023 was a huge day for people in Melrose living with disabilities. For the first time since 1996, the Commission on Disability in Melrose and the Institute for Human-Centered Design delivered the first accessibility self-evaluation to this city. It's an amazing step, and now we can get to work on making this city more accessible. So a huge win for people with disabilities.
Thank you, Garen. Congratulations.
Hi, I'm John Postel. First, I love the decorations, fabulous. And this is a celebration because my wife and I get to go spend a week singing with 150 close friends on an island for a weekend. And it also means that we get to spend 2 hours driving out to spend an hour with my daughter who will watch my dog. But I get to spend an hour with my daughter, so that's pretty cool too.
We'll miss you both next weekend. Hello.
Hi, my name's Laura. I'm happy, joyful today because I'm here with my two daughters, Juno and Nell. Happy that Nell has now been home longer than she was in the hospital. She was in the hospital for 3 months and now has been home longer than her hospital stay, so we're very joyful about that. And Juno wanted to share a joy too.
It's okay to be shy.
It's okay to be shy. She told me she's happy her sister's here.
We're really happy that you're here. Welcome. Thank you. Michael, would you go ahead, please, and light a candle for all of the joys that were spoken and unspoken, as a reminder for all of us to count all the many beautiful blessings in our lives. Thank you. Maybe it's time for a new iPad. Yeah, that is true. Please let us wrap up today in the spirit of prayer. These words are a blend of mine and Robin Wall Kimmerer's. I had known it would happen. All her growing would be away from me. But that did not make it easier. We have to give them freedom. It's our job. Have a great time, sweetie. A wave over the shoulder as they walk out the door. Change is everywhere. Change always holds some form of loss within it, and we feel it. Today, as we steer our own red kayaks through the ponds of our lives, through all the changes in our lives, let us pause to feel, to remember. Let us pause floating on these waters of community, rocked gently by memory, feeling, allowing, accepting what is, all that is changing. When we are ready, may we see the green hearts floating all around us and the flowers. Life renewing itself over and over all around us. We are only a small part, but yet we are a crucial part of the greater whole. Young and old linked in one long breath, new leaf to old, old to new. Thank you for all of this. Our work is to learn to trust that what we put out into the universe will always come back. Amen. Let's join together in another favorite hymn, Blue Boat Home, number 1064 in the Teal hymnal. Thank you, choir and Tom, for leading us. Thank you. Please join with me in the chalice extinguishing words. We extinguish the flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Thank you. Please be seated. Our worship has ended. Please join us, if you would like, for coffee hour in Parish Hall, which is right nearby. For coffee and conversation, people in the Zoom can stay in the room and have a chat with each other. Thank you. There will be a short postlude from Tom. Thanks again for worshiping with us today.